You introduced me already?
No, I shouldn't.
Oh, that's okay. Mariann Cyr. I've been a member here since the early 80s. Well, not here, but in the club. And I've always done, nature has been my thing. I always started with and have stayed with, although I like a lot of things. So if it looks interesting, I'll shoot it, whether it's nature or not. But it's mostly nature. I've judged for this club and a lot of other local clubs and done some PSA judging. And do some programs. And I'm gonna do a wildflower program here. So let's look at what we want. See if I meet any of Mike's criteria. Okay. We have scores. Oh. I'll just talk about it. This is I have to say is a 10. I know this is a 10. This is just, I don't know, how more perfect could the clouds be, Mike was talking about, sometimes our project, what we see on our screens at home, it doesn't project the same way here. And this is much brighter and kind of washes some of the color out a little bit. I always color correct my monitor before I judge. So I'm pretty confident on my monitor, and so it's close, but it's just not as vibrant as what it looked like on my screen. So that's going to apply to everything that comes up. Love one of my rules is, nothing gets a 10 unless I would like to take that and I would do nothing more to it. So that applies to this one. Beautiful color, good composition, lighting is really nice. You couldn't ask for better clouds. Just great image. Hi, everybody. This was a 7, and mainly because the two paws on the left side that you see are really nice and sharp. And but the two faces of the bear are really soft. So that's why I didn't give it a higher score. But I really like the interaction we have with the bears here, particularly one with his paw. I don't know, he's going, I'll have you for dinner or what? Well, I might be able to. This really just shows what I think this is Iceland, or one of those kind of islands. And it just really shows the breadth of the landscape there, which is really nice. This is an X, so this allows some hand-man in it. And I would say that this is probably, much more than this. I, as a personally judging, would disqualify it, but I think this is fine. I gave this I don't want to rely on my memory, sorry. I gave this a 9. One of the reasons why is I thought there was just a little too much emphasis on the sky, and I would crop it down just a little bit. And I thought that, it's interesting, but the lake just doesn't hold my attention. Everything else around the lake, your fjord, whichever it is, I really look at that more than I do the lake. And the lake just kind of takes up a whole lot of real estate in the middle. But otherwise, it's gorgeous. It's tack sharp everywhere, and just really nice colors. Yeah, thank you. This is a 7. I think the story here is really great. You see these two toms and then the hen there is just not interested. And and the two toms are really nice and sharp. You got good color in the feathers, but 60% of this photo is the hen back there, and she's just there's no she's just really out of focus, and I think that really needed to be more. The hen needed to be in focus as well as the toms in the foreground. This was a 10. The colors are not as vibrant as I said from the other one, but the colors are just really great on this. I love the composition with tall trees leading back to the shorter trees, and then the background with all the conifers in the background just give it a nice background, and perfect location for the 3 elk there at the bottom of the trees. This is a 10. This great gray at dusk, you don't often see them in this kind of lighting. You often see them, beforehand, before the sun sets, but the sun's set now. And here you've got this beautifully focused moving owl against a really beautiful background. That eye it just draws you in. You can see that it's hunting, that it's focused right on that probably meadow vole that it's going to eat. And just a great action shot. This was a 7. I like the close-up of the bee. You see a lot of the hairs on the head and the top, that you see some of the little refractions on the eyeballs. But the color is pretty, but really it kind of drowns out the subject, and it draws your attention away. I think I keep pointing this up because I think I can point with it, but I can't. But the back of the bee is really hot. And so if you can, I would bring the exposure up down on that. And there's another bee later on. And if you could do something more like what we're going to see later, I think that would work better. This past flower, one of the first pretty wild flowers to come up in the spring. This is an 8. I gave this an 8. I really like the diagonal. Trying to point, and I can't point. The diagonal line of the stem leading up to the flower, and all the little hairs are just tack sharp on that flower. Nice exposure. You can sometimes just really blow out the interior of those flowers, but this is handled very nice. I gave it an 8 because there's another flower up in the upper right-hand corner, and I can see where there's some artifacts left over from some process that you did up there, and it's very obvious. And so if you're going to use this someplace else, I would try to alleviate those. You really have to be careful when you're doing any kind of dodging and burning that you don't leave anything behind that you don't intend to, because a judge will find it if you do. Really dynamic color, beautiful color. It just screams fall. I like the very verticality of it in a horizontal frame. I think that works really nice. It's well exposed. I just had I think I gave this a 7. And I did that because I'm really looking for a place for my eye to light. It's like, oh, there's the subject. And I keep looking for it. And so I don't know how I would change this particular photo to include that. But I think you need to think about that when you're getting, we all get awed by some of the color we see in the fall. And just think like a judge, I guess is what I'd say, is like, oh, they're gonna look for a center of interest. What is my center of interest? So okay, the interaction here with the signet and the adult is just really nice. The background, I love the squiggles in the water in the background. It's just really fills in the space, but doesn't distract from the subject. The whites up here look blown out, but they are not. They're very nicely handled. The only quibble I had with this was that you cut off the tail, and I would like to see the tail. And I scored that a 7. This is a 9. Beautiful handling of the speed of the flying birds. You caught them just beautifully. Wing position wise, and there's no blurring in the wings, so you shot it at a high enough ISO to stop that. I don't know if you can see it, but when you look closely at the eyes, the sun's shining through the eyes and it makes them kind of glow. And then the background, it just really shows what the background, the area that they live in and roost in with the cattails and the I think it looks like a Crex Meadows shot with the trees in the background. I think there's just a little too much for me, a little too much surrounding area, and I'd crop it in just a little bit on the bottom and just a little bit in. I'd keep the sand hills in the same kind of position, but just crop some of. I want to say an inch. On my screen, it would be an inch, but I don't know quite what to do with how to project that. This is a 7, and this is cute little guy, a little pica, I think. Tack sharp, beautiful, beautiful rendition of the animal. I just thought that there was a little too much background for him, and that I really didn't need to see that much just because it didn't add anything to the story. I think just making a portrait of the animal would have worked just fine. I believe, I don't want to say the wrong number. I gave this a 9. I like the pose, obviously, is really nice on this animal. Really sharp throughout, and the background is there. You see the kind of environment it lives in, but it doesn't overpower. The only reason that I gave it a 9 and not a 10 was I thought it was just a little crowded. I'd like to see just a little bit, particularly on the sides, if there isn't something there that would, you don't want to show. But if it just feels like it needs a little more room. I gave this a 7. It's a beautiful shot of this vulture. All of the texture and the feathers and on the head and even on the post that it's sitting on is just gorgeous. I think though that the background really kind of destroyed it, particularly on my monitor when I was judging it. It was hard to get away from that background. And I think that you could bring that background down a bit, even if it turns gray, which is fine. Could be a gray sky, who knows? And it wouldn't compete then with the bird. And I think it would score higher. This gets the cute factor tonight. It's just, and I scored this a 7, and mainly because I think there's just too much around the little guy. I don't need to see the neck of the bird that much. I would crop it. Oh, sorry, I gotta come over here. I would crop it into here and then just above, just leave some of the black in. You know, we all know it's on the back of the mom. And then it would just really highlight, really focus in on the duckling, or well, I guess it's a gosling in this case. So that's why I gave it the score I did. I think, you know, if you want to try it, cropping it a little bit and see what you think and enter it again, have at it. I gave this a 10. All of the butterflies, all of the buds on that blazing star are tack sharp. They all have sparkly dew on them. I mean, this is a real impact photo. And then the background is just, you can see it back there. You know where the environment that it's taken in, but it doesn't distract from the subject. Okay, this got a 7. The rooster is gorgeous. The lighting on it, it's just sharp as can be. I love that feather coming up in the back. You got a little movement. So why did it get 7? Well, it's standing on a road. It's far more than 10% of the X factor here. So that is, yeah, I just couldn't, I'm sorry, but I just couldn't overlook the road. I think it would do really well in a, you know, a pictorial or open category in some other club. And if you did enter it in another club, I'd probably crop it a little bit so that you didn't have so much on the, which side, right side over there. Some more nice cranes. I think I gave 7. I gave this a 7 because on my monitor it was very dark. And up here, everything is a lot lighter. But I love the position of the heads on these birds. You see all of them perfectly. And you see the, you know, the eyes really well. It's in its environment, and that is really, really nice. So I would, it's hard to say what to do with the brightness, because between the projection here and on this screen and my screen, very different. And I don't know what it would be for somebody else who was judging it. But if I base it on what I saw on my screen, I would bring the exposure up a little bit. And I would also, in the bottom here, you see a little water. I would do some dodging and burning down there, and really make it a lot darker. Don't make it really obvious, but take the really light spots off, because your eye goes to where it's the most contrast. And right here, that is right at the bottom of this image. It's very bright, and then you've got dark all around it, so your eye goes there. this is an 8. Like the, you know, I see a lot of photos like this, and they're all not all as successful. This one is successful for me because of the coloration in the trees on the upper half is that you go across and they're pretty muted, and then you come to this orange one and the yellow one, and it's mirrored in the lake. And that is my center of focus. And everything else just kind of lends itself to that image then. And is kind of supporting characters of that spot. It looks very hazy. And I would, if you use, I use Lightroom for processing mine. I'm sure a lot of you do. If I was using Lightroom, I'd use dehaze on it to take some of the haze off. And I might boost up the contrast a little bit. Another cute little owl. I gave this a 8. Good composition as far as, placement of the owl. If anything, I might take a little off the very top. I still leave the entire hole there, but maybe just come down a little bit in the very top. The owl's nice and sharp and really great look at it. And but it's really the bark around it, excuse me, is really light, and I would darken that a little bit. I do some darkening on that so that it doesn't draw your eye away from the owl. Great action. And I gave this one an 8 as well. Good colors. Most of the bird is really nice and sharp, a little bit of movement in the wings, but that is fine. That's just great. I like, the bird itself is beautiful. I think the background hurts it a bit, particularly the light in the background, and I would see if I couldn't bring that down a bit so that it doesn't compete with the bird, and the bird stands out from the background a little more. Beautiful setting for this bear. Great specimen of a bear. Big Bruin here, and their little eyes, and all nice and sharp. This was one that was similar to the tree on the lake, is that it's very hazy, and I don't know what's causing it, but it could just be the atmosphere you shot it in. But I would take again on this, I would take some dehaze on it, and I think you could get a much more sharp and impactful image out of it. 7. Excuse me. Is there some back there? Okay, this was a 7. Great capture of this lightning, and I love the color in the sky. That is just that purple fading to the blues is really nice. I gave it a 7 because really, thank you. I gave it a 7 because I just don't think there's enough supporting characters in here. I mean, the lake, I think it's a lake because I can see a shore back there. But the lake is handled beautifully. It's nice to have the waves in there. It gives some texture to it. But you really need something else besides just the lightning bolts across the top. I gave this a 7. And this is where we run into one of those rules that we were talking about. And I love the image. And if this was in a straight landscape category, I would give this a 10. But the hand demand here is about 90% of this image. I mean, those are all fields out there. And you can see where they've been worked. And so it really doesn't fit our definition of 90% nature. But it's a lovely, lovely image, and I hope you enter it someplace else. This is fun. It's a neat story. We've got this raccoon in a hole, and it's got its foot out, and I don't know, it doesn't look like a restful spot to me, but I'm not a raccoon. I think the animal, the placement of the animal in the frame is really nice. You didn't cut the tail off or anything like that. It's interesting. I think the main reason I gave it a 7 is because the face and the paw that's coming out are not sharp. The tail's sharp and the bark around the tree is all sharp, but the most important part needs to be sharpened up a little bit. This I gave a 7. And this again is probably running up against the rules. To me, I really need to see more of the natural background behind this frog. And so that I know it's not a setup. Otherwise, that the fern it's on and the frog are perfect. I love that. I do have, I'm a bit biased about the borders, and I really like really thin borders, a pixel or 2 at most, so that it doesn't draw your eye away from the image. And I generally try to make mine a light gray, so that's not as stark white. So it just kind of defines the edges, but don't compete with your image. I gave this a 7. Great. I love that, you know, the young musk ox. You just want to cuddle it. And I like the foreground because it kind of tells you where the environment it lives in. But to me, you know, that out of sharpness foreground is half the image. And so, well, not quite, but I would crop out a lot of the foreground. I would probably crop up to here, and then it'd bring it like this, and you'd still have plenty of room around the calf. But the calf itself, beautiful exposure and tack sharp on the calf. And look, anytime you really want an animal looking at you, you want to see their eyes, and this does that. What I mean, it's hard to get humor in nature photography, but this has a lot of humor to it. Here we got 6 butts and a head showing under this turkey bomb. And I mean, the story is just wonderful. I think why I didn't, and all of the birds are sharp, but we need to even out the exposure on them. The dark bottom part with the folds is really dark, and then the head of the hen is really, really light. And so I do some dodging and birding on that and try to even out the exposure. And then you'll see the whole story kind of immediately. 7. I have to look at my we've got, okay, you know, botany photography is near and dear to my heart. It's what I first started with. All I had was a macro lens, And so I did a lot of flowers. I love the composition on this. It can be a little, they're small. They're only about an inch tall, the ram's head. And the plant itself is probably, foot, maybe foot and a half at most. So they're not easy to get down here. You have to be on your hands and knees, lying flat maybe, to get this kind of a perspective on them. And I love that the way you placed it in the frame and that you got down low. It's sharp. I think why I gave it a 7 was that I found that the upper sepal, the upper leaf up there, was really bright and drew your eye to it, and I would tone that down. And then the pouch of the ram's head and underneath that sepal really needed to be brought up a bit, so that really what you want the viewer to see is the pouch, because that's the ram's head. And you want it to be probably at least as bright as that sepal is on the top, if not a little bit brighter. I believe this. This is an 8. I don't want to give a high score and then be corrected. The bee and the parts of the flower that it's center of the flower that it's feeding on are just gorgeous. Really nice and sharp. Exposure's really nice on the bee. I like the fact that the background is blurred out a bit so it stands out. I thought it was just a little bit crowded on the bee, and I thought, this is nothing that you can do about, but that the flower it is on has a lot of white along the right side, and your eyes go to that. And I don't know if that would be possible for you to do a little dodging and bring down the whites a little bit so it didn't pull your eye away from the bee. Another lovely fall. Seeing here, and this is an 8, and it's like some of the others, it's just not showing the depth of color that's here. It was just, I'm sorry, no, standing in front of you. This needs it is, the color is really saturated, really gorgeous. Not oversaturated, but just beautiful. I thought that the night there's some nice that line is really a nice leading line and doesn't take up too much of the image. On my monitor, the tree here on the left-hand side, the big one, was really dark, and I would lighten that up just a little bit so that you really see the texture, because it's beautiful, and it's really your entry point into the image, and you really want to make the most of that tree. This is a 9, and this ibis, the whites on the ibis are handled really well. I like the fact that it's actually has some action to it, and it isn't just standing still on the beach. And then the waves, you can see its environment, like some of the other really nice ones that we've seen tonight. You can see its environment, but the environment doesn't take over. It's really the bird that stands out. I gave it a 9 because I really felt there was too much of the beige beach on the bottom. And I would still leave a little bit of beach. You want to be able to see where they're at. But I'd crop it up maybe 2/3 of the beach off up to here probably. And that you would crop a little bit here, but you'd still have plenty of room for the bird to look into or look in to walk into. This is a 9 also, don't know when I've given so many 10s and 9s on these things. But there are some beautiful photos. The bergamot here that butterfly is on is gorgeous. It's all sharp. The butterfly is sharp. Colors are just beautiful. Why I gave it a 9 is I felt it was just too centered. It was just kind of bullseyed right in the middle. And I would crop up from the bottom a little bit. I'd still leave the whole flowers in there, but crop up just a little bit, take a little off the left-hand side. That'll move it off just a little bit so that it isn't right smack in the middle. This is a 7. These are really hard to do. They're hard to compose. They're hard to get right, to get everything right because they're so deep when you go to focus, and they're hard to get everything into focus. I think you did really well. The pouch in the center there of the flower are nice and sharp, as are the 2 lateral sepals that come out. The top sepal is not sharp, and it really needs to be because it's a big part of the picture. I think you could do without. I think it would be better to get rid of that fly. So if you have another one without the fly or whatever bug that is, I would use that instead. It just kind of it doesn't really show what it is, and it kind of distracts from the rest of the photo. I thought the background was handled nice, and I like the fact that you've got kind of a diagonal there, working with the upper leaf down through the stem. This is a 9. I like just the texture on these feathers are just great. And then you can see I swear you can see right down its gullet. See its tongue there. And then it just has this, oh, go away. It's too early in the morning sort of face. So, it's kind of humorous, but yet it's just a really nice nature image. This I gave an 8. That flicker is just super, super sharp. You see just every little piece of it, and that's not easy to do. Why I gave it an 8 instead of a higher score is because it's sort of like the black vulture we saw earlier, and I thought that the background just really distracted from the bird. Again, I'd do probably what I would have done with the vulture, and is that I'd take the background down even if it went to a very light gray, and the bird will stand out from the background better. Okay, this one I gave a 7. It's another lovely fall image. Exposure is very nice on this. The tree trunks all have good exposure on them. You're not blowing them out, but yet you still retain a lot of the color and all of the foliage. The main reason I gave this the score I did was that I thought that the tree that is right in the middle really is what your eye goes to. It's the biggest one. It's right in the middle, and it kind of just makes it more of a static image. And I think you could probably get away with cropping about an 1/8 here off, because really you don't need that right hand side. It doesn't really add that much. And then and bring up the base just a little bit, and that'll push that trunk off to the side a little bit, and it'd give it a little more dynamic feel. you know, exposure and color, and seeing this is hard to see. Because, you know, it's hard to find a good center of interest for when you have this agave trees out in front of you. This one, sorry, I'm caught in my cord. This is a 7. I gave that it almost looks painterly. But the bird, the lapwing is really nice and sharp. You got a nice catch light in the eye. Yeah, I could quibble that I'd like to see it more up into a little bit more toward the center, but I think it's a nice placement for the bird. I think the worst thing is that the background just really competes with it. And it's sort of like the flicker and the vulture we had. But this one also had kind of light and dark in the background. You could kind of see it here, but it shows up more on my monitor. And I would, you know, reduce the exposure on the background and make the bird stand out more. I gave this an 8. I like the composition on this. You've got the fog coming up from the bottom, so it gives you an idea. You know, it's late in the fall, it's getting cold. There's a lake down there or some open area. You've got the contrast with the conifers, and then you've got this pop of color. And it's just, I thought that was really nice. I think it could use a little bit of more. I would do some dehaze on it, just a little bit, and I'd also bring the contrast up just a little bit. This is a 10. The placement of when you're doing these kind of photos, where everything is much alike, you need to find that center of interest. And you did. And everything kind of points to that large boulder there, kind of upper middle right. And then it comes down to this pointy one down at the bottom. I love this kind of silky water. Not everybody does, but I do. And the exposure on this was just really well. It's showing a little hot, like a lot of things on the screen. Love the interaction on these guys. Okay, I wouldn't want to face one of those. This is a 7. I think it's a great photo, but I think it just needs some help. I think the whole photo has a greenish cast to it, and I think that's from the glass probably that you're taking it through. And I think you can change the tint in Lightroom and take that bluish tint away and make it more not look like a diorama. But the bears are nice and sharp. You see all the hairs on the fur, and you just can't not just wonder, what are they saying to each other? The one doesn't look too concerned, but and I'd also take down the background a little bit. I'd do some dodging back there to bring down the exposure on the backgrounds, just to really center everything on the bears. I give this a 10. It's just really great to see the colt, is sharp. It's some interaction there with the parent, and the birds are sharp, and you see, like a lot of the tins, you see the background, you see where they live, but it doesn't take over. I like the fact that you cropped and where you cropped it to really bring your eye down to the heads of the birds. We made it.
We need to do the acceptances. The eights. Yeah. Spring Task by John Anderson. Colors at Gilgan Lake, Alan Schultz. I Gave It the Office, Michael Schubert. Red Shouldered Hawk Taking Flight, Don Specht. Bee in Dahlia, Janan Karataken. Fall Path, Ruth Beckfield. Flicker in Flight, Richard Getz. Aspen Holdout, Don Wendell. The Nines. Saxon. Mark Ye. Tandem Sandhill Cranes, Rosalind Long. Right Time, Right Place, Michael Greiner. Windy Day Ibis, Rosalind Long. Tiger Swallowtail, John Lemire. Barred Owlet, Too Tired to Be Fierce, D. Hunnisett. In the tens. Devil's Tower Sunset, Paul Kamen. Fall Scene, Colorado, Carl Figgenshoe. Great Gray at Dusk, Locked On, Joe Fierst. Roosting Monarchs, John Penoyer. Obertron Stream Moss, Alan Schultz. Sandhill Crane Feeding Poult, Don Sweat. That's it. That's the order.